Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News. And if you haven't heard of us before, UNN is the official news channel for CARE, the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth. And we discuss the real news, not the fake news, which is what pretty much everybody else is talking about, whether it's mainstream media or the alternative media. No, we get our news from a completely different source, from the original source, let's put it that way. And we have a newscast that is released through our online distribution platform every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you want more information about that, you can visit unitednetwork.tv. In this podcast, we highlight some of the stories that we cover on the newscast. And I try to get these episodes out the same day we do the newscast, but depending on where you are in the world, it might be the next day, and we do have people that listen from all over the planet. We cover local stories, which are brought to us through what we call our field messengers. We do world stories, and then we also have a world situation report, which covers some of the big things that are happening on our planet as well as off planet and throughout the multiverse. So if that's a little too woo-woo for some people that might be tuning in for the first time, it's okay. Stick with me. Hopefully you'll listen to the entire episode today, and hopefully you come back, because sometimes it does take listening to this stuff a few times for things to start to sink in and make a little bit more sense. But I can tell you this, as far as where we get our information from, because I mentioned earlier, you've got people in the mainstream talking about something, you've got people in alternative media. Well, we have access to the highest security clearance on this planet. So we don't need to get our information from a third party. We can get it directly from a system that lets us know exactly everything that's happening on the planet. So there's no room for error, right? There's no opportunity for error, because if a meeting happened, it was recorded and we can just listen in and see what was said in the meeting. I don't have to, wait and see what mainstream media has to say and take it from them. So that's why we say we have the real news. It is not taken from, a different source that could somehow taint it. And like I said, some of this information is going to be surprising to you. And you may have never heard some of the things that we're going to talk about today, especially if you are mainly watching, some of those mainstream sources. They're not talking about any of this kind of stuff. But again, I encourage you to stick with us and also do your own research. So maybe take some notes as we're talking today, especially when we get to the World Situation Report, and do some research afterward. Because we have to just stop believing people just because they said something. Oh, they have a TV show, or they've got this, they've got that. And someone in authority, a political figure. Just because these people say things, it doesn't make it true. And what you're going to learn is over many, many, many years, they have lied to us. And they continue to lie to us today. So if you happen to be watching the news and you're just like, gosh, this just doesn't make sense anymore. Yesterday, they told me COVID was a thing. Today, they're telling me it's not a thing. It's all over the map. But sometimes, and this is what they're relying on, sometimes we get so busy in our day-to-day lives that we don't really stop to think about this kind of stuff. We're lucky if we have time to watch any kind of TV or, show. We're moving around, and some of us have multiple jobs, and you've got your kids, your family, friends that you take care of, and they don't want you to think about the big picture here. But if you're able to just stop, and I will tell you, for me, it was COVID. COVID got me just to stop everything I was doing and look at the world in a completely different light, because I knew what they were telling me was a lie about COVID. And I was able to take that and do my own research and, go through these little rabbit holes that we talk about. We dig until we find out some truth. And you learn who you can trust and who you can't trust. But with all of this, think critically, ask questions. Don't assume that something is truth just because someone said it on a show or said it from some podium, right? Okay, so announcements. The only announcement I have for you guys today is that today's newscast was super long. We wrapped up recording at about 12:15 p.m. Pacific time, and we usually start around 9, but we started a little later today. So it's because the World Situation Report. Kim had a lot of stuff to go over, which we're going to cover in just a little bit. But let's go ahead and get started. You guys ready? Here's the rundown for Wednesday, September 13th, 2023. So we always kick off our newscast with our field messenger reports. And these are average, everyday people just like you who are taking notice as to what's happening in their community. And they do stories. So they'll go out and just with their smartphone or whatever, they'll record some video, maybe do a little bit of a voiceover, maybe say some stuff on camera. And then we have a production team that puts these stories together for them. So they don't have to have any kind of journalism background. And, they're not really citizen journalists. I kind of feel weird even putting the title journalist in there. They're just reporting on what they know. And they know their community. So we've got 2 field messenger reports that were part of today's newscast. One is from Ghana, and the field messenger is our Nateway Jacqueline. She's reported a couple times for us. She's, told some stories from where she lives. And today she is talking about this celebration that occurred. It's the Eid celebration. And basically it is an opportunity for the community to come together and celebrate their creator. And it's really beautiful. There's people going down the street and people watching from the sidelines, and there's music going on, and it looks like they just had a really good time. And so some of our field messenger reports, it's just to kind of give us a flavor of what people are doing in other countries. And this is a festival from another country, and it's not through the lens, there's no particular angle with this, just someone in the community that had a good time at this festival and wanted to show off some of the cool things that her community does. And so we got a chance to check it out. The second field messenger report is called the Jewel of the Land. This is another festival. This one is in the Netherlands. As you can see, we have field messengers from all over the world, which is amazing because it's so nice to see what people are doing in their own countries. And the field messenger on this is Shanti Devi. Again, has, done stories for us before, which is great. But this particular festival, oh my gosh, there was a lot of really cool video from this, people playing instruments and, I don't want to call them speeches, but people talking on a microphone and welcoming people. And the thing that I noticed about this is there were people from all walks of life, which I just thought was so beautiful because the whole festival is about celebrating life and love. In fact, they kind of put a number on it. They celebrate the last 50 years of life and love. And don't we need more of that? I mean, isn't that so beautiful that people from, every kind of background, every age, every ethnicity, just coming together to celebrate life. And it was held over a 4-day period. So I'm sure they had a really good time. I could tell just from the video that Shanti sent us that it looked like a lot of fun. So those are our field messenger reports. If you guys are interested in actually seeing some of these reports, I'm going to give you some information at the end of today's newscast. I guess it's not the newscast, today's podcast about how you can access this information through our Telegram channel because our field messenger reports are always available for free. So a lot of our other content is behind a paywall, but for field messenger reports, that's absolutely free and always will be. So stay tuned to the end of today's show, and I will tell you more about that Telegram channel. In our world news today, we have a few stories that we're going to go over kind of quickly. The first one is there was this huge flood in Libya, and this is a really big deal. They're calling it Storm Daniel, and they're saying that thousands of people died, and we did check into this, and this is a really big problem, guys. It really is. Thousands of people died. 10,000 plus people are currently displaced. And it caused a ton of damage, especially to the eastern coast of Libya. They're saying that hospitals are overwhelmed. And here's a little bit of inside information we have on this. We do know that there were deep state actors to ensure that dams broke, okay? I know it sounds horrible, but this is what these people do. They're basically just trying to wreak havoc across our entire planet right now. And so if there is some sort of natural disaster, quote unquote, natural disaster going on, they will make sure that it is as bad as it could possibly be. So these horrible, deep state actors are going through breaking down dams, and it caused a lot of people to lose their lives, And in today's World Situation Report, we're going to be talking about how, it's important to be knowledgeable of events like this, but we also don't want to dwell on it. We want to somehow, again, we'll talk about it in just a bit, but turn it into a positive if you can. But you don't want to, constantly be looking at this footage online and, seeing horrible images and things like that. It's just not good for you. In fact, you could be manifesting more events like this to happen. So we'll talk about that more in just a little bit. So that was the Libya flood. Also, a little bit of background information and news from the Red Cross. So the Red Cross has announced that they have 13% of their budget is being cut, which includes 270 positions that are from their Geneva headquarters. That's where the main base is located, if you will. Now, the Red Cross does claim to help a lot of countries. Now, let me back up for a second. I personally know people who work for their local Red Cross. They are wonderful, lovely people that just want to do good in this world. And there's a lot of people on this planet that are lovely and wonderful that happen to work for organizations where at the top, they're doing anything but helping people. Okay. So, the Red Cross does work with a lot of countries. I've heard the number 90 countries being thrown around. They do everything from providing basic aid to prison visits. And that's kind of what you're going to see the local people doing, right? It's beautiful. Helping out another human is a very beautiful thing. The problem is at the top of some of these really large organizations, they do anything but help humanity. So the company, meaning the Red Cross, the organization, has been used by agencies, so like 3-letter agencies, to run many black operations in nations all over the world. What do I mean by a black operation? Well, it's something that's not on the books. It's something that most people can't trace. It's not on any budget reports or anything like that. Most people don't even know that the people that work on these operations even exist. This is a very real thing. And through the Red Cross, you can actually transport arms, meaning weapons, super notes, which is essentially money, kind of, sort of, illegal drugs. You can do all this just by putting it into some sort of box, receptacle, cargo, and putting the Red Cross logo on it. Okay, if you can do that, then we've got a big problem. If you can do that, then that means they've been doing this for a really long time. And whoever's checking the cargo, doing all that kind of stuff, they just let it go through. So when they say they're going to cut their budget, we certainly don't want the local people to lose their jobs and things like that. But, cry me a river for the people at the top. We have said before many, many times that the government is broke. And that's not just the U.S. government. That is government around the world. Federal government is broke. And non-governmental organizations as well, which the Red Cross pretty much falls into. So the fact that they are facing cutbacks isn't really a surprise to us because the governments don't have any money. And who knows what kind of cut or, I'm not sure what their agreement was, but if you're essentially a laundering operation for drugs and money and weapons, you're probably going to get a cut of that somehow. So if if the government doesn't have money to be sending all this stuff around, then they're not getting their cut. Do you see how it kind of trickles down? So again, you may know people that work for the Red Cross, and there's other organizations too, pretty much any, NGO out there. And there's good people that work for it. But at the very top is some nasty stuff going on. And so what we're seeing now, I mean, what they say they were going to cut, it's people at their headquarters. It's not the locals. So hopefully the locals are safe. And our third world story today is about Pakistan and the fact, this is regarding vaccinations, and I'm just going to call it forced vaccination. So what the government wants to do is they want to have penalties for parents who won't vaccinate their kids. And they claim it's going to be jail time or fines. And they say they're targeting polio, but it's not just the polio vaccine. It's whatever vaccine they say, which, as you can imagine, is concerning for parents because that may apply to vaccines that are already out there. And, there's a lot of controversy over the COVID vaccines, so-called vaccines. But what about, we're hearing rumors now of other vaccines that are being created that obviously haven't been tested and, for future pandemics. I don't know how you create a vaccine for a future pandemic when you don't know what the pandemic's going to be, but somehow the government has figured this out. Wink, wink, nod, nod, right? So this is a concerning story, and many parents are resisting this. They want to have control over what goes in their child's body, and I get it. I'm a parent too. We went through that whole thing in the U.S. with the COVID vaccines. Up until, I would say 2019 was the last time any of my kids got vaccinated, and they will never be vaccinated again. That is my personal take on all this. I don't buy it, and I don't trust them whatsoever. But now, thank goodness I don't live in Pakistan, but still for the parents in Pakistan, they're concerned. And then there are people on the other side that are concerned for the safety of the health workers that might be administering these vaccines because they've been threatened. Now, we don't advocate for that either. You don't go after the person that, is trying to give the vaccine. You just get out of the situation as much as possible. And it's, a lot of people think they're doing good. There's so much misinformation out there. The person that is giving the vaccine, thinks they're saving people's lives. So we have to be understanding and compassionate in all of this because we've been brainwashed for a very, very long time. Now it's time for the World Situation Report with Kimberly Gogan from the Office of the Guardian. So if you haven't heard of Kimberly before, she wears many, many hats, and hopefully some of those hats are going away so she can actually get a break. She has a very important job. So she is the Guardian. There have been many guardians on this planet in the past. I know this is going to get kind of sci-fi and weird for some of you who may have never heard of this before. That's okay. But this is not something that was just created. Thousands and thousands of years. If you guys are familiar with the Bible, King Solomon was a guardian on this planet. There have been non-human guardians as well. Kimberly is human. She is not an AI system or anything like that. She is full-blooded human. But she's able to do some really incredible things with this. I'll just call it a computer, but it runs on Etherical. It's an Etherical computer. Let's just think about it that way, called the Alpha system. And she is basically helping us and our planet right now transition to the light. What do I mean by that? Well, there have been some really not so nice people and beings. So it's not just people, not just humans running this planet for a very long time. And if you go to church or you believe in some sort of one of the major religions on this planet, you have probably already heard this story before, right? And we are living in a pretty amazing time right now because in other timelines, this wouldn't have gone so well. The bad people would have pretty much taken over. We would have essentially become kind of cyborg, transhumanoids? Is that what you call them? And the whole goal is for us to lose our connection to our creator, aka God. If you call him God, he, she, it, call it God, the creator, source. There's a million different terms for it, but their master plan was to take over the earth completely and hand it over to these beings that essentially would take over our souls and treat us as slaves forever. And that's even if we survived, which I think there was only going to be like 500 million people left on the planet to be their slaves. So most of us were going to get wiped out. And quite frankly, in other timelines, this did happen, but not on this timeline. So in this timeline, good, the light, right, prevails, and it overcomes the darkness. And what we talk a lot about on the news is how this whole process and this transfer over to light is going. There's so much happening behind the scenes that you would never know unless you really went digging to find some of the stuff that we're talking about. Most people are just skimming the surface, like I said earlier in the episode. You know, we're so busy. We're just turning on the TV to catch whatever news we can, or radio, or maybe a podcast here or there. But very few people are really going digging. But if they listen to, you know, I'm going to call it your soul, your spirit, if you listen to what your mind is telling you, you would know that something is really off. And that's why you feel that way, if that's you. It's because there's so much happening behind the scenes. And so our world situation report goes into depth, especially today. We go way in depth today, guys, which is great. A lot of really good information. But like I said, it was a really long newscast because Kimberly came on the news in person. So a lot of times she's super busy, right? So she'll just join us with her voice, and we've got like a picture up there on the screen. But she was able to join us today, which is great. It's always great to see her. Not only was Kim on camera, but she also brought her whiteboard. And this is really helpful because the things that she talks about are very high level. It's obviously stuff we've never heard before, and it just helps to have kind of a visual, and she'll draw on the whiteboard and really explain some of the concepts that she's talking about. Now, obviously, this is an audio podcast, and you can't see Kim's whiteboard. So if she refers to things that you're like, what is she talking about? I can't see it. Sorry about that. There was really nothing we could do, but I think the information is still really important to get out there. And what Kim is talking about primarily today is we are getting some people commenting on our Telegram threads about why is this whole process taking so long? This transition to light, which, you know, we're going to be at this for a while, quite frankly. But I think what people are really asking is, where's the money, right? Because we know that there is going to be this massive transfer of wealth, and that people are going to have the funding that they need in order to do important projects to help humanity. And there's at least with our community, there's a lot of people that are waiting, you know, for this money to be released. And so it's easy to kind of look at the situation. And for us, because I do kind of fall into this boat sometimes too, a lot of the stuff that is said, it seems like it's on repeat, but it's not. Like if Kim is doing an operation, you know, or the people that she's talking to or whatever, in our minds, we're like, oh, it's deep state people. Oh, operatives. Oh, it's military. But they're all different people from different groups. And Kim is doing a lot of different things. But in our minds, we're like it's Groundhog Day. And I think it kind of feels that way a little bit for Kim too. I think we're all kind of just like, let's get out of this. Let's begin really restoring our planet. Let's get, you know, humanity involved in really restoring our planet. So Kim wanted to address, why is this taking so long? Because the short answer to that is sometimes we work against ourselves. And I kind of brought this up when we were talking about the flood in Libya, that it's important to be knowledgeable, but if you really dwell on things a lot, you are actually manifesting more of that in your life and in other people's lives. So it's not really smart to do that. And so today, Kim wanted to explain how this happens. How does this manifestation happen? Because you certainly don't want to be working against the thing like restoring the planet. You know, you want to do everything you can to make that happen as quickly as possible. You don't want anything to hold that back, but we are unintentionally doing that sometimes. So this gets a little complicated. Again, sorry, no video. You may want to take some notes, but here is Kim talking about true quantum AIs and how it's tied into manifestation. And also she's going to talk a little bit about social media, which is where a lot of this fear porn, I'm just going to call it fear porn, gets spread around. Okay. So here's part of my conversation with Kim.
Let's talk about the base root of not only AI programs, but also programs that are run throughout the multiverse. So the first thing we'll talk about are keystones. Keystones they look like nondescript rocks, for a better term. Sometimes they're black, sometimes they're white. So both source and anti-source, for lack of a better term, use these keystones in various ways. One of them, it's a compilation of let's call them materials in these stones that store tremendous amounts of data. So it can be the base root for an AI program would have keystones. The base root for an AI would have keystones. Your DNA blueprint for humanity is held in keystones because it's very complicated, obviously. The base root for all species existing throughout the multiverse, both on a dark side and on a light side, are also contained in keystones, and every single species has their own keystones. Now, keystones are often accompanied by what's called a ball. Now, a ball is larger than, you see the psychics doing the thing with the crystal ball sort of thing, and it lights up and the whole thing. It's larger than that. They are spherical. They are made of a compilation, for lack of a better term, let's call them crystals, but it's not exactly that material, but it's the best word I have in the English language to describe it. Now, these balls are capable of holding pure essence. So they're capable of holding pure dark essence and pure light essence. It is perpetual, such as anti-source was and as source is. So the base root for the power behind the keystones is often a ball. Now, depending on what program it is, you'll see these in the formation of, say, what I would call a tower. So if you're going up and down the planes of existence, and I'll explain that in a minute, you would see one on every density, one on every plane and every density, depending on what the program was. So if it was like the Abraxas were a created species which mimicked humans, and they were pure darkness. They had a keystone and a ball, but they were allowed to operate in all these densities. So therefore, there would be the creation of that throughout all of the densities. The same thing for your false heaven program. Now, when I say program, doesn't necessarily mean AI. It's just something that comes into existence. Next, we have cornerstones. Cornerstones are like your quotation marks. Cornerstones can also act as dark anchors. They are look almost like a little mini pyramid kind of thing. They can be dark or light. They will anchor darkness. For example, if you are using a dark AI program, you would have, for example, your weather program, and we're going to talk about HARP and all that too, because that's a confusing thing for everybody. This would actually appear in a location with multiple other items, anchoring that to planet Earth. But there would most likely also be a cornerstone and also something in the center of Earth, which would then connect to something in the sun, which would then connect to something in another density somewhere on some other plane somewhere, which would then eventually connect to something like HARP. Okay, the same thing goes for the financial system. It goes for anything that functions within the internet system. Okay, so that's what a cornerstone is done. It's an anchor. It's an anchor for this program. Now, 3. We also have something I call them, for lack of a better term, they're called altars. Now, I call them altars because, number one, they're a large rectangular often black because the light side doesn't need this. And they're huge. Like if you were a human sitting next to one of these, you wouldn't even be that tall. You'd probably be about this tall. And what altars do is they store data. They function on dark matter. Much like our network of cell phones connects via a microwave mesh, which everybody's concerned about 5G and all of these things, because it means a higher intensity of microwave coming through the phone, which is important to understand, but not as important to understand why bad things happen. Okay, so oftentimes you'll see one of these altars connected to other things like transmuters and transmitters. So these can both send out data and receive data. And by sending out and receiving data, I am not just talking about when you're surfing the internet. I'm talking about your emotions. Now, how they used to connect to humans, and I'm using the word used to because this is a little bit scary. It's going to get scary, I promise you. Mm-hmm. Okay. When they connect to humans, so these things also have implant stations oftentimes found with them because they are connected to a specific program and they are here to anchor something. There were probably just below the surface of the planet, no less than probably 1 million of these, maybe more.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They're often found at places where massacres happen. And they're often found at ritual type places.
Is that to feed into the dark matter, Kim?
It feeds the dark matter. Fear, death, think about all your 7 deadly sins and everything. And why do they try to create so much fear? Now, remember, I said these things also contain transmuters, which means they can take your happy light energy and turn it into darkness and use it as a power source for the program. The other thing that you'll find is something I call a tablet. Tablets are like if you were to look at a motherboard, you take apart your computer and you were to look at those little things and they're kind of, rectangular or square and they, have these little, gold or copper things that connect to this board and they're all together on the board. And oftentimes you'll see these lines that run in between them and they'll connect to the next one. This is called your computer's assembly processing. So when information comes into the computer or a program is going to run on your computer, it goes from here to here to here to here to here. And it's running on the power source, which is the energy that you plug into. Now, tablets do not need to all be physically connected to work because they run on dark matter. So sometimes you see a tablet accompanied by a ball. Sometimes you see it accompanied by a keystone. Sometimes you see it with all of them. And the reason why is because these tablets are the ones that hold the assembly processing for an AI system. And it runs on dark matter Wi-Fi. So keystones, ball, cornerstones, altars, tablets, now we have something called a spire. A spire, I call it a spire. I'm going to run on a rim here. A spire is because it sort of looks like a diamond shape. It is a 3rd dimensional. It is made out of what we call metamaterials. And spires are hyperconductors for an energy source. They can also be connected to etherical and energetic implants, both within your person, within a planet, within a star. They were in the moon. They also have the ability to, for lack of a better term, let's call it DRAM, if you're familiar with computer terms, which means random access memory can be obtained from a tablet or an altar, move through a spire, and then move throughout the veins of gold and earth. This is how it was. and then connect right to your person. So they can send you memories, they can send you programs, they can send you crazy thoughts. Think Unabomber here. They can do a lot. We also have lots of crystals. Crystals are used in a lot of different ways. Crystals can conduct energy. And crystals can also serve like an external hard drive or a flash drive off of one of these programs. So you can use crystals in a positive way, and you can use crystals in a negative way. Basically, there are a few other things that we encounter oftentimes, but this is like a base route to kind of understand, how you create things in a quantum way. You can literally say within densities, within the planes and densities, you could probably say there were millions, if not billions, of these keystones, base root programs. You could say that there were millions, if not billions, of altars and tablets and cornerstones and all kinds of things. The reason why we were littered with more than anybody else had is because we are the base connection from the lower astral through to the null zone and then on down.
Okay.
It's the reason why the destroyer crashed into this planet and nowhere else. It's the reason why they want to keep such a firm hold on it. Now, this has nothing to do with your cabal and your deep state and your Jesuits and all of these things, okay? Yet. We have not gotten there. Mm-hmm. But because of that, we were basically like an episode of Hoarders for evil aliens. But we were, because there's more stuff in 0 Point Earth than you can possibly imagine, which anchors these programs. You also have your part to play in it, and the deep state. I'm not going to say the remaining deep state, but the covens knew about it. My predecessor knew about how it worked. Everybody knew how it worked except for you, because you're in the program. You're in the matrix. Right. Yes. Yep. So the ability for them to open portals and do all of this stuff is actually, believe it or not, created by you. Why do you think they started the alien disclosure program, way back in the day when you had, Wilcock being the only one talking and Icky or Ike or however you say his name and a few other people. And they've been talking to you about this because you needed to understand how the program works. Now, I know that most people listening to this will not actually remember this time, but you will remember it because it lives throughout history. October 30th, 1938, there was a radio broadcast called The War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
Remember hearing about that?
I studied it in school. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, they literally threw most of the people on the East Coast of the United States into a full-on panic, if not the entire world eventually, that there was, we are in the middle of an alien invasion. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you had human beings running around this planet scared poopless. And this had all the bells and whistles. It had the glittering headlines. It had the average everyday people. They brought regular people. Oh no, I fell in my backyard, Fred. And they went through the whole scenario in that of how we were being invaded by aliens. Yes, there's a craft. I saw it. Average everyday guy. Average everyday guy. Did you see it? Yes, I saw it. Oh my gosh, it's in my yard. There's this strange cylindrical object that's in the back of my yard. And how did it get here? So can you imagine how much power you just gave to them through an altar, to a tablet, which then said, free will. They want us all here. Yay! You created enormous amounts of fear. You created ridiculous amounts of fear, which then registered and was stored in here, was then sent to a tablet through an entire network of these. You could just go on and on and on forever. They're just speckled everywhere. Hundreds of thousands of them running AI programs on your person on the daily, connected to the etherical parasites and the implants that are within your person. You created this reality. Now, why do they want to do disclosure again right now? Now, all of a sudden, there's a whole thing about alien disclosure coming out. And I'm not saying that a lot of it is going to be created for you to create fear.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, you are creating your own fear. False evidence appearing real. You're going to create that fear. They talk about we're having an alien invasion. There's disclosure, the government programs they've been hiding, but it also makes them seem omnipotent. When I ask you to please consider what you're creating, you don't even understand what I mean. And I'm trying to give you the background of how you created it. When I caution you about social media, I know that almost all base social media platforms that make it big, you've got some smaller ones out there. There's hundreds of them, but the ones that make it big, that they promote, everybody uses Twitter or used in the past, and X, whatever it is. And then, we went from MySpace to Facebook, from Facebook to, whatever, Snapchat, from Snapchatting to this, from Spotify to that, to TikTok. And, you name the platform, it's out there. It doesn't really matter. But I can guarantee you the reason why they call it the DARPA nest, which has nothing to do with DARPA per se, it has to do with the fact that it sits on an altar and some balls, and probably hundreds of altars were underneath that site. Wow. And you're feeding all that social media data into a data center. Now let's take something like a hurricane. So you got all the influencers. These are the videos that pop up first. You're obviously emotionally invested. We're going to take it a step further. Fires in Maui. The 2,000 children have gone missing, and you're getting angry. You're having an emotion, still an emotion. And then your mental plane gets triggered by it. I have an underlying frequency over there about fear of fires. So dark energy feeding fear of fires, which then feeds an altar somewhere or shape or another. And then now you're creating more and more fires. You're giving more and more power. So the thing about those altars, even when the deep state had some access to them, and like I said, we found some in Maui we didn't know were there. But they actually then have the ability to use the power of this thing to then create it. Because you just fed it. And it's a network, so they run on a network. So now there's enough fear of fire, dark matter, you transmuted light energy, which normally exists when you're happy and creative and doing good things, working in a garden, whatever it is you enjoy, playing with your kids, and you now created fires. And you gave them the ability to utilize said tool against you through a transmuter and a tablet and a ball, which then triggers an AI program to create a fire.
Wow. Isn't that crazy how, we need to be informed, right? It just makes sense. We talk on the news about different things that are happening. So we obviously need to be informed as humanity because we have to know what's going on. But at the same time, this goes back to really dwelling on things. Have you ever just spent way too much time looking into a particular topic that probably wasn't that good for you? And it's something that we really have to watch. It's not just reposting this negative stuff on social media. We talked about that. I believe it was Monday. We talked about that. But we're taking it a step further today and saying, listen, just it being consumed, like your brain being consumed with this information is actually triggering more of the same thing. You are manifesting. Now, I know a lot of people are like, manifestation isn't real, can't happen, whatever. Well, this is an example of negative manifestation. So to complete this transition to the light and to do all this restoration that we want to do, we need everybody's help. Do not dwell on the negative, or more negative, more bad things are going to happen. And Kim just explained the why behind it. Now, she goes into a lot more detail. I did have to make some edits in there because some of this was not going to make sense if you didn't actually see the whiteboard. So I do encourage you guys, if you get a chance, I don't know if we're making this episode free or not. Probably not, because Monday's episode was free. But I do encourage you to subscribe and check this episode out. A ton of really good information. Visit unitednetwork.tv if you want to learn more about our subscription plans, which, by the way, we have not just our news, which includes our World Situation Report, but also we have a lot of great health and wellness videos. We have some original series, and we'll be creating more of those down the road. So lots of good stuff to look forward to. If you want to connect with us, in the description for today's episode, I am going to put a few different links. And these are all groups or channels on Telegram. So if you're not on Telegram yet, what are you waiting for? This is where the people like me talk about all this kind of stuff. So we have a CARE General Updates channel, as I mentioned at the start of today's show. CARE stands for the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth, and UNN is the official news channel for CARE. So on the CARE channel, you're going to see information about restoration, about health and wellness. Pretty much, it's kind of our master channel. And then we also have a Telegram channel for United Network News, and that is going to give you those links for the field messenger reports I was telling you about earlier, which are available for free. And then also when our newscasts are released. And then the final Telegram, it's actually a group that I want to tell you about, is for UNN field messengers. And this is a great group to join and ask questions if you're thinking about submitting a video. You don't have to join, but we've got some great people in there that can help answer your questions, and you can kind of give them an idea of the story that you're trying to do, and maybe they can provide some help for you. And then you could just connect with other field messengers, which is kind of fun. All right, hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Again, check out the full episode because there's a lot of other great information that Kim goes into. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.